Hey guys, we got great news today. The U.S. Trade Court invalidated Liberation Day tariffs. We have been liberated from Liberation Day tariffs. It's the glorious day. The liberation of Liberation Day tariffs day is now my favorite day. This panel of 3 judges, they could have just issued an injunction. This was an emergency hearing. This case was expedited, all of that stuff. Everyone would have understood if they just said, you know what, plaintiff, we believe you have a case, but we need to hear further details from both sides, and we're just going to issue an injunction, which would say, hey, these can't go into effect until we hear more and come back for oral arguments whenever. But they did not do this. They basically did the best thing, which they said, to the defense, you have no grounds at all. This is clear as day. We're issuing a ruling. That's right. They issued a ruling flat out. Shocked everybody. It might not shock you because you might say, well, it's obvious that he couldn't do this. Well, it's just shocking when anything in America upholds anymore in our government or our courts. As Donald Trump, the fascist, has been trying to consolidate power at every single possible level and steal it from wherever he can. So I was pretty surprised at this. I was pleasantly surprised at this. Now, in case those of you who forgot what Liberation Day was, it's when Donald Trump stood on a stage. He had this big board with numbers that nobody knew at the time where he got them from. He made all his claims of the world and China and everyone else ripping us off, and the tariffs that they imposed on us, and then the new tariffs we were going to impose on them. But there was a problem. A lot of the tariffs they had written on there that were supposedly imposed on us weren't actually tariffs that were imposed on us. They were made up numbers. Well, where did they get them from? Apparently, they just took whatever country was listed. They took our exports and they compared it to our imports. Right? Exports compared to imports, and whatever our deficit was on the exports, whatever percentage, they use that percentage as the tariff amount. I'm sorry, I got to keep it together here, but I just find that absolutely hilarious. And that's why I say I don't think Donald Trump actually knows what a tariff is, right? So, when you hear him speak, it's like, is he just being devious, or does he actually really have no freaking idea what a tariff is? But yeah, that's what they did. So they just looked and they said, okay, Mexico, your imports you imported this amount from us, and you exported this amount to us, and we're going to take the one number, divide it by the other, and we're in a deficit of 15%. And that's the tariff that Mexico is ripping us off by, which that's not what a tariff is. That's just a trade deficit. So anyways, we have been liberated from this. So happy to not have to deal with the taco trade for a while. As you know, I used to do finance on this channel, stock stuff. I haven't been doing as much because of the craziness in the world. The taco trade, the nastiest thing that Trump's ever heard. Seriously, Trump, the stuff you've said, the Trump always chickens out trade is the nastiest thing you ever heard in your life. Give me a break. It's just, you're so immature. It's a clown show. Absolute clown show. So now this is going to go on to the Supreme Court, of course. Oh, by the way, Ruben Tech, where we meet at the intersection of tech, politics, finance. Be sure to hit like and subscribe down below if you haven't already. Share this with a friend. See what they think. And if you can support us for the price of a cup of coffee, we'd greatly appreciate it. Memberships down below. So this will go on to the Supreme Court, where we know that there's 2 stooges there, Alito and Thomas, who are going to vote for Trump no matter what. They claim to be former members of the Federalist Society, but it's obvious that they are purely MAGA now, in the MAGA fascist cult. MAGA cares nothing for the idea of America. They care nothing for the Constitution of America. MAGA only cares about their dear leader. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit of a distraction. Sometimes I wonder if in the West, the left went too hard after religion, not understanding that by taking these people away from religion, By demeaning religion, they opened up the door for all these carnival barkers like Trump and Elon Musk to come in and fill that void. That's neither here or there. Maybe I'll talk about that one day more. But anyway, so he's got 2 votes for sure there. And a lot of people will say, well, he's got, Amy Barrett, and he's got Brett Kavanaugh. But I don't agree with that. They are Federalist Society judges who've actually been sticking to their Federalist Society roots. And whether you agree or disagree with their rulings, the one thing is that they are interpreting the Constitution in a very particular way. In fact, out of the 2 of them, I can only see the presidential immunity case being one where there was a little bit of twisting and turning and uncomfortableness with the ruling that really didn't seem very logical. So this, much to the ire of MAGA, much to the ire of Trump, much to the ire of a lot of MAGA conservatives who aren't real conservatives, as I said, they're fascists. Kavanaugh, Roberts, and Barrett have largely been joining liberal judges on some of these cases. And it's because Donald Trump is simply put trying to break the Constitution. He's trying to break the rule of law. And that's not what Federalist Society judges are for. So if they stick with how they've been ruling, this should be a clear slam dunk for the plaintiffs. You cannot use the Economic Emergency Act of 1977 to overrule the Constitution, which clearly states the power of the purse lies in the hand of Congress. There's no debate. And that's what that's what the panel said. They said this is easy. You can't just start issuing executive orders that override the Constitution. That's not how it works. You can't invent an emergency under this Emergency Act, which itself doesn't override the Constitution. It's not how it works. They own all 3 branches of government. Just take a bill. If you want to do it, I don't believe in the tariffs, but if you do, MAGA, take the bill to the House, have them debate it on the floor, have it passed, take it to the Senate, have them debate it, have it passed, and then sign it into law. But having dear leader just say 50%, no tariffs, 75%, month pause. This is ridiculous. This is absolutely a joke. It makes us look like clowns on a global stage, like children. It's just nonsense. So I'm personally happy that this happened. Now, after Liberation Day, I want to talk really quick about the big, beautiful bill, which passed last week by a huge margin of 1 vote. 2 fiscally conservative Republicans voted against it, both considered to be deficit hawks. Representative Tom Massie said on the floor that this bill will add $20 trillion with the T dollars to the U.S. deficit over the next 10 years. You might say, well, that guy's wrong. I saw on TV it's 300 to 400 billion, which is a substantial amount. So times that by 10 and that's 3 to 4 trillion. No, what he's talking about is the total amount of deficit. The bill adds 300 to 400 billion each year to the existing deficit we run of 1.6 to 1.7 trillion dollars. And that's a very, very favorable projection. I just want to be clear on that. It could be as high, and like Massie said, I believe he said it could be as high as $30 trillion. And I think that's probably closer to what it is. Because even without this bill, I think that we're on track to be $2 trillion in the hole this year. Okay, so much for Elon Musk and Doge. And speaking of the chief carnival barker, Elon Musk, he recently said, it took me a while to figure out the obvious that cutting programs in America isn't going to work. So much like his promised drive from LA to New York, fully autonomous from the vehicle charging itself, going to happen next year. I'm going to save $2 trillion. No, I'm going to save $1 trillion. No, I saved $200 billion. Experts have looked into it. They think that number is actually closer to zero, much, much closer to zero than it is 200 billion. But it doesn't matter because that's all wiped out in the stroke of a pen. As Trump, just with the military spending alone, they're going to increase it by $200 billion. So, Elon Musk much touted $170 billion that he saves on the Doge website. Wiped out just like that. So why are we talking about this? The U.S. is in a lot of debt, $36 trillion. $7 trillion has to be reissued this year. What does that mean? Well, they can't afford to pay the debt that they have. So when these bonds come due, they have to reissue new debt. And of course, using a household analogy isn't perfect because the U.S. government is not a household. And it's definitely not a middle-class household. But it's basically like when you have a credit card and you get a balance transfer to another credit card. Okay? So they're reissuing debt to pay this debt. $7 trillion. Now, if you Google it, you'll say, Ruben, you're wrong. It's $9 trillion. That's what you'll tell me down in the comments. Listen, guys, $9 trillion includes the $2 billion estimated deficit from this year. The amount of debt that has to be reissued. So I'm being favorable to the government here. I'm not talking about new debt they're taking on. I'm talking about the existing debt that has to be refinanced. And why am I talking about this? Because Scott Bessent, the one man that I have a little bit of respect still left for, and I don't understand, as I say on his channel, why he's joined this clown show, why he wants to be a part of the clown show. The man who has single-handedly tried so hard to get the U.S. debt refinanced at better rates for the past 10 years because he fully understands how this dynamic works. Let me show you real quick here. This is a 20-year treasury. And last week, we had a huge issue with it. See this? At the auction, people didn't want to buy it. We have to auction these off so the government has money to spend. People didn't want to buy it, so the rate jumped. You might say, well, that's not a large amount. This right here is called a basis point. This is 3 basis points. Every single basis point is a tremendous amount in the bond market. You have to understand that the numbers here are gigantic. Okay? That's why over here they go down into the tens of thousands. And here it's listed in the thousands. This is 1/10 a basis point. So now I just want to give you an example. Remember that this is debt that they have to refinance. Okay? And this is the interest on that debt. So this is a percentage point right here, which would be 100 basis points. So this is, if you're doing this in basis points, this would be 490, this would be, I'm saying that wrong. Yeah, no, that's right. A basis point is 1/100. 493 basis points, 0.4, 493.4 basis points. But anyways, 4.934%. Sorry, I didn't mean to confuse you. So let's just go into a quick example. Let's look at the past year, and we can see here, our rates are down at 4%, and here they're up at 5%. So we're going to move into Scott Bessent's world. You have $7 trillion of debt coming in that has to be refinanced, right? Well, if you refinance it at 4%, remember, this isn't your principal. Your interest payment that you owe on $7 trillion is $280 billion each year. $280 billion. If we move up 100 basis points to 5%, then your interest payment is $350 billion. Do you see how that might be problematic? Do you see how that is a tremendous amount of money? Remember, this is not, you are not getting high-speed rail for this. You are not investing into education. You are not having social programs. This is just additional interest you're paying. And guess what? Your government, my government, they can't afford to pay this interest. You may say, what? How is that possible? They can't. They're running a deficit already. So what do they do then? Well, guess what they do? They issue more debt. Yes, I'm not kidding. This is how it works. Absolutely, this is how it works. Now, to be fair, this isn't like a middle-class household with debt, okay? As long as they can keep this number relative to GDP at appropriate levels, it won't go into a death spiral. But right now, it's really close, okay? So for that 300, let's say they do it at 5%, that $350 billion in debt they have to pay on that $7 trillion that they refinance. Sorry, I'm going to be mixing up billion and trillion. On the $7 trillion they have to refinance, the $350 billion yearly in interest that they have to pay. They can't afford to pay that, so they have to issue more debt. That debt then would be at, let's say, 5%. On $350 billion, 5% of that is $5 billion, $10 billion, $15 billion, and $17.5 billion. Okay, and then of course that's recursive. So on that $17.5 billion, you have $5 billion of interest that has to be paid. But as you know, this is like one of these series, and it converges. And I think it converges roughly about here, because now you'd be under $1 trillion. So you're talking that $350 billion actually cost you about $369 billion. Okay? So it's not $350 billion in issue in new debt to pay the interest. It's $369. Okay? This is problematic. This is why you rather have it at 280, where the 5.5 and the 8.4, you're at what? 14. So it converges to like 285 or 286. A full $80 billion left, which is basically half of what Doge claimed it saved. And remember, this is interest. And remember, they have to find buyers for all of this. And guess what? That's proven to be a problem. China's central bank issued an order to their banks to slow down, if not halt, their purchase of US dollars. As we kick people out of SWIFT, as we're punishing people through SWIFT, and they're like, I don't want to be part of SWIFT. Remember what they did in SWIFT? They got paid in US dollars, and they would take these dollars and they would park them in treasuries. Why not? They're part of SWIFT. It's beneficial. Now they're going to stop doing that. China told central bank told other banks, when you do trade within BRICS, do it in yuan directly to their currency. That means the US is losing out. They're not going to be parked in dollars anymore. China used to take their dollars and they used to buy our debt. Then we enacted this stupid economic trade war against them with all these sanctions. And they said, what are we helping you out for? Why are you doing this? In 2008, we came and bailed you out and bought all this debt. Now they've said, okay, fine. And they're slowly but surely selling this debt. They're not going to dump it. A lot of people are like, they're going to dump it. They won't dump it because it will also hurt them, because that's where they have their reserves. But we've seen how much gold demand is coming out of China. Right now, they're leading the world in demand for gold. And everybody they add to BRICS, their trade with BRICS increased 11.3% year over year. Every country they add there, that's less dollars in bonds for the U.S. And so what's Scott Basin saying? Deregulation. Let's let American banks buy as many of these bonds as they want. What? Are you serious? So that if this hits a death spiral, it's going to crush everything in America? Basin, that's your idea? You're a genius. And this is what you come up with? Deregulation? Because all these other people don't want our debt anymore? And we need people to buy these ever-increasing amounts. We're going to deregulate the banks so that they don't have any minimum cash requirement and they can just buy as many of these bonds as they want. And already, as we know, it's rumored, the Fed denies it, but looks like they're doing silent quantitative easing, purchasing $43 billion in debts last month. But we're going to let the banks just buy unlimited amounts? That's your solution? Okay. I mean, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it blows up the entire financial situation of America. Why? Why? Because they wanted to weaponize BRICS. Who's they? It's not just Donald Trump. So both sides, you guys, they wanted, or not to weaponize BRICS, sorry, they wanted to weaponize SWIFT because they wanted to start economic warfare. Does this stuff make any sense to you? Does it sound like it's beneficial to you if you live in America? I'm not too sure. Okay? But that's what I got for you today. Leave me your comments down below. I'm always interested in hearing them. And of course, hit that like and subscribe button. All of you out there, you know I love you. I appreciate you watching the channel. I appreciate interacting with you in the comments. Have a great day.